Hi, I'm Joanne Lee Cornish, body composition coach and slightly obsessed with being an outlier in midlife and beyond. I offer one-on-one coaching. I have 7 group coaching programs that I run throughout the year, and I also have a 10-month mentorship program. You can find out all about those and a lot more at my website, joannelee.com. Okay, let's get on with this podcast. Hey everybody, in 2026, can you believe that? Couple of things I want to talk about today. I want to talk about temporary states when a good thing can become a problem. So I want to kind of go into detail on that one. And I want to start with change. I want to talk about change. It's a new year, and a lot of us have things we expected this year that we want from this year, and a lot of that requires a certain amount of change. So I do want to talk about change as well. But first off, this podcast, let me just tell you what happened with this. I was just telling my sister-in-law today about this. So, one of my things for this year was like, I'm going to turn my podcast into a video podcast. So I buy the thing and I buy the other thing and I buy the other thing and I upgrade the thing. I do all the things that are needed. Film the do my hair, look half decent, film it, edit it, thumbnails, blah, blah, blah. Did all this, right? Went to upload it and they said, if you upload a video, you'll be taken off Spotify, Apple, and Google. I was like, what? What? So it turns out it's still going to be done on video, and I'll refilm this one. But you don't want to see me right now because I look an absolute wreck. But I guess it's never easy, right? It's never just easy. I guess I've got to do it in 2 parts. So I've got to do it like this. I've got to do the audio podcast, which secretly I'm pretty happy about. But then I have to get the filmed version and upload it a whole different way and do it separately to all the different platforms. So anyway, there was that. So what I mean is the video podcast will be available, but it'll be separate. So it'll be definitely on my YouTube channel, Joanne Lee Cornish. And I'm going to figure out how to put it on Spotify. It's already on Spotify, but to put it on as a video. So leave that with me. It is happening. Until then, just me and my English accent. So the beginning of the year, and I want to talk about the quiet truth about change. And hear me out here and let me know if this resonates with you, or if it would ever have resonated with you, because for me, less now, but definitely there's a time in my life when this would have described me. So what I'm saying is you're in a place where you don't hate your life, but you're not really happy with your life either. You know something needs to change. It can be your body, your habits, the way you show up in life. And you think a lot about it. But thinking about it still feels somewhat safe, definitely safer than acting upon it. Because as soon as change feels real, it feels hard. As soon as we start to change, it becomes overwhelming. It becomes, I don't know, disruptive. It becomes what risky. So instead, you stay where you are. Not because it's good, but because it's familiar. And here's what a lot of people miss. You might think that you're scared of change, but it's not that. You might think you're scared of making something different, doing something differently, but it's not that. What we're scared about is what change would prove about us. Because if we changed, if we followed through, if we actually did what we're capable of, then we have to face how truly powerful we really are. And honestly, that's a little bit confronting. So what do? We tell ourselves, this is just the way I am. I'm good the way I am. I'm good. We'll say, now's not the right time. I'm too busy. Or you'll start to say, it's just too difficult. This is just too hard. But the truth is, we're not actually afraid of struggle. We struggle all the time. We're actually very comfortable with struggle. Busy, overloaded, pushing, trying harder, doing more. That's all struggle. We all do it. I'm very guilty of that. So we're not uncomfortable with struggle. What we're actually uncomfortable with is ease. Because when we're at ease, for some of us, it feels unfamiliar. It might even feel undeserved. Ease feels like it might not last. So what do? When we're experiencing ease, when life actually does calm down, we subconsciously pile more on and pile more and more on because somewhere difficulty actually feels normal. Does that sound like you? I'm reading that. I'm reading that from my notes. And at the beginning I said, that used to be me, but it's still me. I'm reading that and it's still me. Busy, 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 pushing, pushing, pushing. So my mantra for 2026, I said in a prior podcast, but my mantra for 2026 is overlearn so you don't have to overthink, which I love that. I heard it from somebody else. Overlearn so you don't have to overthink. We overthink about nonsense. If we actually understood what we were thinking about, we wouldn't have to overthink it. So I love that one. But there's another little mantra that I've used for quite a while, and it's about bringing ease and joy to your journey. And that all the programs that I do, that's what I'm trying to do. I'm trying to literally vomit all this information over you, help you implement it. And in the end, I want you to experience an ease and a joy in your journey because of the overlearning. Does that make sense? Overlearn what you need so you don't have to overthink it. And with that, there becomes an ease and a joy. Now, I can say I live in a place of ease and joy when it comes to nutrition and body composition because I've overlearned it. If what I just read applies to you, I cannot suggest high enough or join the Victory Vault. The Victory Vault starts on January the 26th. It's only a 2-week program, but the Victory Vault is about breaking down things like this. It's not about forcing motivation. It's not about pushing willpower. And it's definitely not pretending that change is going to be instant, but restructuring how we think of change in the first place. Because change doesn't have to be hard. Confusion is hard. Fear is hard. Not trusting yourself is hard. If it sounds like I'm talking to you, change does not have to feel heavy. It does not have to feel overwhelming. It isn't about becoming somebody new. The Victory Vault is about removing what's in the way of who you already know you are. I always have a tough time explaining the Victory Vault. But if that sounds like you, definitely go to the link, yourvictoryvault.com. I only run that program once a year at the beginning of the year, and it sets people up for the year. So what's the topic of the day? I'm going to talk about temporary state. And I think I might have even done this in a different form in a podcast, maybe right at the beginning of all this. But I want to reframe this about when good can become a problem. So let me start with something that might sound ridiculous at first. So if you showed an alien, or honestly, any just anxious human being, I don't know, what happens in your body during a hard workout, they would probably think that exercise is actually pretty dangerous because you know what happens during a workout? Your heart rate spikes, your blood pressure goes up, stress hormones rise, inflammation increases, and muscle tissue is literally damaged. So on paper, that looks like a medical emergency, doesn't it? And yet we all know exercise is one of the healthiest things we can do. Why? Because it's a temporary state. And that's the distinction, temporary versus chronic. I mean, if we had chronic, heart rate spikes, chronic high blood pressure, chronic stress hormone rise, chronic inflammation, and chronic muscle tissue damage, then that wouldn't be good. But it's temporary. And that might be one of the most important concepts missing from maybe modern health conversations because there's a tendency when we find that something's good, we think more of it is better. So what I want to talk to you today is about temporary physiological states, why they're necessary, and just touch on why so many well-intentioned people are quietly sabotaging their health by trying to live inside states that were only ever meant to be, very, very brief. So the core idea here is that the body runs on signals. It's not permanent instructions, not just to go back to the change, not permanent instructions. The body runs on signals. So a signal rises, it does its job, and then it's supposed to back down. That rise and fall is the point of it. When people get into trouble, it's almost never because the signal happened. It's because the signal became a lifestyle. So when people take something that's helpful in short bursts, training, stress, fasting, inflammation, cortisol, calorie deficits, all these things. And then we decide, oh, a little bit is good, then more must be better, and all the time must be really optimal. But the body strongly disagrees. Let's give this some language. A signal. A signal is short-lived information. Let's talk about a few of the top ones. Cortisol. Cortisol, we think it's a bad thing. Cortisol, when it increases, it mobilizes energy. Now, come into my programs, I can talk all about this, but cortisol's job is to get energy. It's like find energy, get energy from wherever you can. That's why your blood sugar goes up. That's why blood sugar is released. Cortisol's job is to find fuel, get as much fuel as it can for the brain. Inflammation. When inflammation increases, it's there to repair tissue. Blood glucose rises after a meal to move the sugar out your blood. mTOR activates building muscle. AMPK activates the cleanup cycle. I'll get to those in a moment. So these signals are not the problem. Signals are our communication. A state, however, a state is when a signal stays elevated. So chronically high cortisol, persistent inflammation, a constant energy deficit. States, when a signal becomes a state, this is where the problems begin. And then we have a trait. So we have a signal, the message, the state where the signal stays elevated, and then we have a trait. A trait is what your body becomes over time. So a trait can be having stronger bones, more muscle, better insulin sensitivity, higher tolerance to stress, greater metabolic flexibility. These are all traits. These are what the body becomes over time. And traits are earned after the signal resolves itself. Been and gone. The benefit never comes from this. What I'm trying to say here is The benefit never comes from the actual signal. The benefit comes from what your body builds when the signal is over. And with repeated signals, then we form traits, what the body becomes over time. And they can be good and they can be not so good. So let's go back to exercise. Exercise isn't healthy because it's gentle. It's healthy because it is a controlled threat. You create a temporary environment of stress. Like I said, elevated heart rate, elevated blood pressure, increased cortisol, inflammation, tissue breakdown. Then, and this is the important part, you recover. When you recover, muscle is built stronger, connective tissue adapts. The mitochondria, where all our energy is made, they improve. Cardiovascular efficiency increases, insulin sensitivity improves. If you never let the stress resolve, you don't get adaptation. You just get tired. And yet, how many people do we know that they treat training like something that they should never recover from? You know, more days, more intensity, less food, less sleep, never taking a day off. It becomes like a badge of honor. And I was that person. I remember at one point when I was competing and being very proud of the fact that I'd never taken more than 4 days off working out. It was like a badge of honor. Man, was I wrong. So when people treat something like training like there's something that can never rest, they have to do it again, have to do it again, have to do it again. And they forget that recovery part because on some level they think that that's weak or they don't deserve it or I don't know. Now the other two, and this is why I think I have done a podcast in the past, and this is a little much to do a podcast on really anyway, but please come and do the Muscle Month program if you want to know more about this. And this is the perfect example, and this is where I'm talking about mTOR and AMPK. So when I'm talking about body composition and when I'm talking about when I do coaching calls on building muscle and losing fat at the same time, and people say you can't do it, and you absolutely can because you use these two pathways. Because these two pathways, mTOR and AMPK, are in fact meant to be temporary. mTOR builds muscle and AMPK burns fat. The problem is people choose a pathway and they don't come off it. You're meant to flip between, or I shouldn't say you're meant to. It's very easy to go between the two pathways and build muscle and lose fat at the same time. So I don't need you to memorize the science here. Come and do Muscle Month for that. Just understand the relationship. So mTOR is, it's like an on-off switch, which is essential for muscle protein synthesis. So mTOR is about building. It's about growth. It's about repair. It's about muscle protein synthesis. It's about energy availability. And mTOR turns on when the person eats, especially protein and carbohydrates. mTOR is turned on after resistance training. And mTOR is turned on when the body senses safety and resources. So an example of, well, no, let me do MPK. So that's mTOR, it's building. Then we talk about AMPK, which is different pathway, different temporary state. And AMPK is about breaking down and cleaning up. So AMPK, that pathway is for fat mobilization. It's for recycling damaged components, about efficiency. And the pathway for AMPK is turned on when energy is low, calorie deficit, definitely during fasting, doing endurance work, during calorie deficit, repeating myself. But here's the mistake. People pick a side. They decide one of these, well, they're not even aware of these pathways for a start, right? They're not aware of mTOR and AMPK, but they do pick a lifestyle or behavior pattern. So when I think of mTOR, I think of the bodybuilders or all the cute little teenagers that are doing this right now, and they're doing the bulking phase, which I just think is absolutely adorable because they've obviously never, ever done a cutting phase. So the bulking phase, knock yourself out because in 10 years you won't be doing it. The bulking phase, They're training really heavy and they're just eating huge amounts of food and they're putting all this weight on and all this muscle and they are bulking. That's mTOR doing its thing. That's mTOR because they've got protein, they've got carbohydrates, they've got an abundance, they've got resistance training. That is mTOR being turned on. Yeah. But they stay there. And then they get bigger and bigger and fatter and fatter. And funny, they never do the cutting phase, huh? They never ever actually, they usually lose interest before the cutting phase, which is adorable. It's super cute. And then you have the people that choose the AMPK pathway. They don't choose it, they just, like I said, they're probably not even aware of it. But what this is it's the calorie deficit, it's the dieting, it's the training every day, it's lots and lots and lots and lots of cardio. That's the AMPK pathway, and that is the pathway for fat burning. But they stay on it. Training, 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 cardio, 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 calorie deficit, diet, 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 fasting, fasting, fasting. So when people can't change their body composition, it's usually because they're staying on one pathway. And the thing about that is because you're deciding one pathway is good, then the other one must be bad. And that's simply nonsense, honestly, but I mean, nonsense, because both are essential. But when it comes to AMPK and mTOR, when they are both meant to be temporary states, when they become a lifestyle environment that somebody chooses and that somebody wants to identify with, then they actually become problematic. Things like mTOR, if you keep mTOR switched on all the time, remember it's promoting growth. And mTOR, this is where, do you remember a few years back when everyone was scared of eating protein and protein's going to kill you? And I was just sitting on the sidelines, just twiddling my thumbs for a few years, waiting for you all to figure it out. But I remember all those forks over knives and all those movies. Well, one of the study they kept quoting was, protein gives you cancer, protein gives you cancer. Well, that study came from they proved that mTOR can create cancer. Well, that's because it creates growth. So protein triggers mTOR because it creates growth. But I mean, you'd have to be in an abundant and a constant state. mTOR's not a constant state, but they got that little bit of information that said, protein's going to kill you. It was taking what is a temporary state and making it a permanent state, and they take a little bit of information and say protein will give you cancer. Like, come on now. I could go on. I should do a whole podcast on that topic, like because I remember when that was all going on and everybody wanted to be vegan. And if you're vegan, power to you, knock yourself out, fabulous. If it's a life choice, don't do it for your body composition because it's probably the worst possible way to actually improve your body composition. But anyway, I should do a podcast on that because why protein won't kill you. All right, let me make a note. Because I wrote all that. I wrote a whole thing about that back when everybody was against protein. Oh my gosh. And now look at them. Everyone's doing carnivore and 1 gram per pound of meat. Dang, I was sitting around twiddling my thumbs there, watching everyone just get fatter and weaker and just be like, okay, I'll just sit here eating my chicken and working out till you guys catch up. But anyway, and then there's AMPK. Well, the thing about AMPK, and I'm not joking here because I know a lot of people that do this, especially ladies, they've found that if they're in a calorie restriction, doing lots of cardio, they can control their weight. And that is because they're on this AMPK pathway, but it's meant to be a temporary state. When you keep that AMPK pathway on permanently, you're getting it's a lot of stress and you're getting a lot of muscle wastage. It will not work. And now we've got bones getting weaker, muscle wastage, especially with age. Highly stressed environment, and I know a lot of people. I know a lot of guys, younger guys, that love to stay in that mTOR building environment. But unfortunately, I know a lot of ladies that have chosen to stay in this AMPK environment. Both of which, when they're not good for you when they're always turned on. They're meant to be temporary states. Um, and like I say, staying on one path or another, in that case, won't get you the body composition you want. Because if you stay on the mTOR path, you're going to be big and fat. And if you stay on the AMPK path, you're going to have a reduced metabolic rate. You're going to lose a lot of muscle. You're going to find it harder and harder to actually sustain your weight. It's not good. But how are you meant to know that? When's the last time somebody told you that? And I'm touching on this, but you can see how people fall into that trap. But again, come and do Muscle Month if you're even curious about hearing more about that. Um, so the mTOR dominance, that's that constant surplus. It's a constant insulin signaling. That creates metabolic issues if it's turned on all the time. And in the same way, chronic AMPK dominance, that constant deficit, the constant fasting, excessive training, poor sleep also creates problems like thyroid suppression, hormonal disruption, muscle loss, anxiety. I forgot about that. Very, very poor recovery. So the body was never designed to live in a permanently in a build mode or a breakdown mode. It was meant to cycle. And that's when I'm talking about joy and ease. That's exactly what you can create with your eating and your training if you understand these two. What about inflammation? So this is pretty misunderstood, isn't it? Um, that's one of the worst PR problems in health because people treat inflammation like a disease. Oh, I'm inflamed. Oh, my inflammation. Well, inflammation is not a disease, it's a response. So inflammation shows up to clear debris, to signal repair, to initiate healing. So after training, we actually want an inflammatory response. After injury, it's absolutely necessary. And after infections, it's life-saving. So the issue isn't inflammation, the signal, it's unresolved inflammation. So inflammation is supposed to be a chapter, not the entire book. So if your lifestyle keeps pulling the alarm over and over again, poor sleep, ultra processed food, chronic stress, alcohol frequency, under recovery, inflammation never gets to shut off. Um, and then people try to suppress it instead of asking it why it does. So then they try, suppress the inflammation instead of the anti-inflammatories and everything, instead of asking why it's never resolving itself. Again, temporary states are adaptive, chronic states are destructive. I started by talking about cortisol, so let me just cycle back around to that because this hormone's been unfairly demonized as well. You think you don't like cortisol because it gives you belly fat and makes you hold water. Well, you're right, but that's a prolonged state. What cortisol actually does is, well, it helps you wake up in the morning. It mobilizes energy. That's what it's meant to do. It supports your training. It helps you respond to stress. We want our cortisol to rise. We just don't want it to stay elevated. The problem isn't cortisol. The problem is when cortisol never gets the message that the threat is over, when it never comes down. And this is also a layering, a stacking problem. So hard training, that no recovery time, calorie restriction, fasting, loads of coffee, poor sleep, mental stress, and then they blame cortisol because they've got belly fat, they've got poor sleep, they've got cravings all the time, they're anxious all the time, they're not very motivated, they're holding a bunch of water, they're losing muscle off their arms and legs, and they blame cortisol. It was never cortisol's problem. It's they're living in this permanent emergency signal. I touched on this. And this is where behavior really matters. There are lots of things that people think are good, but only because they're not really asking for how long. So with training, yes, it's supposed to challenge you. It's not supposed to grind you into the floor every day. If your performance stalls, injuries are going to accumulate, your sleep is going to be worse, your mood is going to be pretty flat. That's all feedback. So when people are always getting hurt, they're not sleeping very well, they're not really fun to be around, and the training's not really improving, that's feedback. More intensity is not always the answer. Same can be said for fasting. And, I think fasting is an amazing tool until it becomes a personality trait, until it becomes an identity. I mean, it's great for improving metabolic flexibility, but when fasting becomes rigid, I mean, when people panic at the idea of eating earlier than their set time, when they're not refueling the training or responding to hunger, when they're literally scared of eating because they're eating outside of some boundary they've set, then it's no longer it's still a tool, but it's kind of it's control disguised as this discipline. That's what it is, right? And with control, for a lot of people, there becomes an anxiety. Now, for fasting, like I said, I think it's an amazing tool, and I thought that was an amazing tool because it become nice and habitual. It can become habitual, which is it becomes habitual very easily. And when structured correctly, it's fantastic. But then people would increase this and then add a day and then do this out and then passing every single day and it's 18 hours and it's 20 hours and then it's one meal a day. It's not meant to be a personality trait. The same can be said for calorie deficits. You know, definitely cutting, the teenager out there that's just the bulking, if you ever want to try a cut, it's actually pretty useful. But living in diet mode for years is not. A calorie deficit to be a phase is great, but again, when that becomes a person's identity, oh, I don't eat very much, I don't need this, I don't need that, and daily they're just controlling it, controlling it, controlling it, and again, there goes the ease, there goes the joy. There's always a level of anxiety with when we need to elicit control instead of choice, then there is a level of anxiety. Truth. Another one. You should put my notes. Yes. The cold exposure. It's a stressor. Very useful in doses. But the cold plunges, well, let's stay for 3 minutes. Let's do 5. Let's do 8. Oh, come on now. Let's do it morning and night. Let's do it all the time. Let's do a cold plunge party. I've seen those. Stacking your cold plunge on top of heavy training, on top of low calories, poor sleep. That's not resilience. Amazing tool, but that's a biohack that people have become very, very involved in. And again, an amazing tool. Don't let it become the identity. Don't invite me, to your house to get into your cold plunge. Don't do that. Haven't. The psychology behind all this. As humans, we love simple moral rules. We love to clutch our pearls and identify with something, don't we? This is good, that is bad. Do more of this, avoid that forever. But biology just doesn't work on morality. It works on dose, timing, and recovery. So another issue about identity. Once something becomes identity, so I'm a fasting person. I train every day. I never rest. I never eat carbs. Then what happens when a behavior becomes, or a signal, I should say, when a signal becomes an identity, then what happens there is people stop listening to feedback. So I can use myself as an example, like I thought, the training thing. That was a long time ago. But I was doing the fasting for years. I think about 4 years. 4 years. My family's done it a lot longer than that. And the only thing I had was, I didn't eat till noon, and it was easy, very easy for me. It became habitual. I think it was a useful tool, but I didn't bring it up at parties. I mean, I didn't tell people, "Hi, I'm Joanne. I fast." It wasn't like my identity. Because I did listen to the feedback. I was aware, even though I kind of liked it, it simplified my morning. I was losing muscle. I was not getting enough protein in. I was very aware of that. And I was looking at my day and like the only way I'm going to get enough protein in is to stop the fast, is to not fast the way I am. And I was once I once I was really aware of the feedback, once I really looked at my food, I was like, I'm just not getting this protein in, and I think I could, and I just didn't. Then I was quite happy to drop the fasting, even though I'd been doing it for quite some time. But there was no anxiety about it because the fasting really was for me a choice. It wasn't really a control thing. It was just a tool. But I do understand how so many things when we think they're good for us, they can become an identity. So that there's no criticism there because I totally understand how that happened. But when people stop listening to the feedback because something literally becomes an identity. I train every day. Who you are, if that's how you identify, you're never going to take a day off, are you? If you're like, I never eat carbs, like I'm keto all the way, like then you're never going to listen to the feedback of that. And there is a problem when we stop listening to the feedback, and it's hard to stop. It's hard to listen for feedback or watch for feedback when we are anxious and when we are using control, not choice. So that mindset keeps people really stuck in a permanent stress signaling state. Um, how can you check yourself? A simple kind of filter you can use with any health strategy. Um, if it's working as a temporary state, you're gonna notice your sleep's good, your mood is stable, your training is always getting better, improved performance, you've got a usual appetite, you've progression over time, you don't feel rigid in the behavior. If it's a chronic state, what you're going to recognize is rigidity in your behavior and anxiety when you're asked to move away from that identity. So you're a fasting person, and somebody wants to go for breakfast, and you're like, oh my God, I can't go for breakfast. And again, if it's control or a choice, which is it? If you're anxious, it's control. If you're not anxious, you don't have break, then it's a choice. If you go somewhere and there isn't a gym, do you get anxious? Then maybe you've got this chronic state going on. What about poor sleep, anxiety, stalled results? Are you even getting better? Constant effort for diminishing returns. I see that all the time. The gyms of the world are full of people that never, ever change, and most don't even get better. Now, that's not always because of a chronic state, that's often because of a too infrequent state. But a lot of people are getting it wrong. Our body's always giving us information. Our body's always giving us data. It's always giving us feedback. It's really, the question is more, are you listening or are you arguing? I mean, a lot of health is about dancing between opposites. So mTOR and AMPK, the dance between building and breakdown, the dance between stress and recover, the balance between pushing hard and allowing yourself to restore. But the mistake isn't using stresses. The mistake is moving them into a permanent situation that you then call wellness. The body's not asking for you to be extreme. It's happy if you are extreme in a temporary state. It's asking you to be rhythmic. Signals rise, signals fall. Adaptation happens in the space in between. And honestly, it's in the space in between where real health lives. That's it for Midlife Mayhem. This podcast, I do hope you enjoyed it. I've got to plug my programs because here we go with my coaching. Peak Week 5 Day Shred, only time this year, January the 12th. 5 day diet, 7 day program. It's epic. And with the 5 day peak week shred, you just turn up. You don't have to make any choices for 5 days. I make all the decisions for you. Maybe that's why I like the program. Maybe that's where I get control. I don't know. But the other thing about that program is there are 4 coaching calls. So I coach you through the week, but I also coach different topics. It's an opportunity for me to showcase my coaching, how I coach people. So what I do is I pick different topics. So peak week's always different, and the topics I usually pick are topics that I feel are relevant to this moment. And I also pick topics from my programs of the prior year that really got a big response. So I know I can think of 2 off the top of my head, and one of them was mitochondrial health. People just don't even understand it. They don't even know what I'm talking about. So I know that's going to be one of the topics. But that's where I pull the topics from. I coach you through the program. I explain why it works. Everybody gets great results. La da 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 da. But it's my ability to coach on popular, relevant topics. So that is the 5 day peak week shred. Low price. I don't even know how much it is. I know it's a low price, but I don't even know how much it is. But it's my lowest price ticket anyway of my coaching programs, and it's a great way to experience me. But to go full circle on this podcast and the quiet truth about change, if you're looking at this year and you want to make a change, and your life might be great, but there's things you want to change, then gosh, please come and look at the Victory Vault. It is the opportunity to pause and actually look inward and dissect ourselves in a group format. There's 18 different topics that we discuss. And at the end of the 2 weeks, there's a written agreement. And it's a written agreement that you will have written to yourself. It's pretty cool. So that's the Victory Vault, your Victory Vault. You don't have to have a goal to come into it. You just have to have a desire to do better this year. Midlife Mayhem. Hope you enjoyed. I do hope you enjoyed this podcast. You can find me all over social. Just search for my name, Joanne Lee Cornish, and of course my website, joannelee.com. Be sure to check out what program I have got right now. I'm sure to be running something. And remember, you can always contact me, joanne@joannelee.com. Until next time.